Hey guys, welcome back. This is part two. In part two, we're going to work on the world interactions a bit more so that I can click on objects and be able to differentiate between, say, NPCs and signposts and crates and things like that. And the system we're going to be using is pretty cool, so I hope you enjoy how we're approaching this here. The first thing I want to do though is I just want to create a 3D object, make it a cube. I just want to call it NPC, just a placeholder, something to play around with and test with, right? Just want to place him right about here. That's fine, looks fine. And then I also want to create, we'll duplicate NPC, and I'll place it over here, and I'll scale it a bit differently, something like this. Say it's like a sword or something. And just for testing purposes, we'll call it item. Be like an item you can pick up and put in your inventory. We don't have an inventory yet, so we can't do that with it, but we can try to tell the difference between these based on just what they are and not something like a switch statement or something silly like that. We want something more modular, remember? So we're going to work on something that we can extend very easily. So what I want to do is I want to go to my scripts. I'm going to create a new script. It's going to be a C# script. Call it Interactable. Interactable is a class that all of our interactable classes and objects in the game will derive from. So NPC, that's an interactable object. It'll be an interactable. A sword a sword that's out in the world that you can pick up is an interactable object, so it'll be interactable. A chest, a signpost, a crate, you get the idea, right? They're all interactable in the same way, so they're all going to derive from the same class. And they'll all have their own actions, their own implementation of interactable, but they'll all start with interactable. And that's what we need to set up first. So let's open up interactable. Yes, so you don't break everything. And within Interactable, we're going to need a couple of things. First of all, I'm going to get rid of this. I like starting blank. And the methods that we're going to use in Interactable, at least the most of them that I can think of at the moment, are going to be virtual methods, which means a subclass, a class that extends Interactable. Methods within that can be override methods, which means it will override the virtual methods in Interactable. Just a solid way to make sure that it's working the way we intend it to work. So I'm going to set up, it's going to be a public virtual void, not returning anything. I'm going to call it move to interaction. And what this is going to do, it kind of does what the name says, right? It's going to take our player agent, and it's going to take the place that it's trying to interact with, which would be the item that this interactable class is attached to in this case. It's going to move the player to the interactable object and then interact with that object. Because we can't just interact with the object before we get there, because we'll be talking to a person across the map, and that'll feel weird, kind of break the whole experience. So we want to make sure that our player gets there first, and then he initiates the interaction. Then we start talking to him. Then we pick up the sword. So let's do it that way. So move to interaction. First of all, we'll need a reference to the player agent, right? And we want this whole interactable class to have a reference to that. So I'm going to set up a public nav mesh agent, and I'll call it player agent like we did before. And this move to interaction will be passed a nav mesh agent from our world interaction class, and I'll show you that in a second when we do that. So we call it player agent as well. And then I'm going to say this dot player agent. Now that means this one that is on this instance of interactable. So let's say interactable is on an NPC. Well, this means this version of player agent, this instance of player agent on that NPC or on that item. It's not referring to this player agent, it's referring to the player agent on this instance. I want to set it to be player agent. That's to avoid the confusion here, so that it knows, oh, you're setting the one that's on this item, the one that's on this instance, to the one we just passed it to move to interaction. I get it. It makes sense. So you notice that in world interaction, when we click on an interactable object, we're not moving to the object, we're not doing anything, but if we don't click on an interactable object, we're moving to the point that we clicked on. But we also want to move to the interactable object if we click on an interactable object. So what I will do is inside of this condition, I want to grab the interacted object that we clicked on, and I want to grab a component from that. And that component is going to be a component that is derived from interactable. Interactable. So if we have NPC, right, the class NPC will derive from interactable, which means if there's an NPC component on an NPC, it is still an interactable, so I can still grab interactable component, which is a nice way to handle this whole OOP thing in a component-based design, because I can grab a component based on a base class, which all of our interactable objects will have, so it makes this really clean, easy way to do this. So interactable, and then go through interactable, and you'll notice interactable has move to interaction. And I want to do that, and it's going to say, oh, you need to pass it the player agent. So I'm going to grab player agent and pass it player agent. So now when we click on an object, it's going to move to, well, this is the idea, it's going to move to the interaction, because in here we're going to move our player agent to the object's location. So I'm going to grab player agent, grab the destination once again, and set it to be this dot transform dot position. Which this is not necessary because it knows it's this instance. I just want to clarify that, at least in the code for me reading it, that I'm referring to this position of this interactable. All right, that looks pretty good. So let's go ahead and set that up in the game world. I have my NPC, but I want to create an NPC class real quick that, as I said, derives from interactable. So I'm going to go new C# script. I'm going to call it NPC. And what's cool about this is if we have enemies, let's say, they could derive from NPC as they are NPCs, or they could derive directly from interactables, but we'd probably derive them from NPC and build on the NPC class with our enemy. So like health and attacks attached to an NPC. It'd be the same way to handle that. So NPC, what all of our derived classes will have that this doesn't quite have yet, but it will, is an interact method, right? So if I go to interactable, I'll go ahead and set it up and so you can see. I'll make a public virtual once again because it's going to be overridden. Void, it's just going to be called interact. And then we're going to say debug.log. That is a cat trying to get in here to bother me at the moment. Hey. Hey. No. No. I'm busy. I don't care. Go back in there. If you're going to be loud, go back in there. Hey. No. Okay. So I want to write something to the console, and this is going to say interacting with base class. That way I know if this method is called, that I'm not interacting with the NPC. I can tell that I'm interacting with the base class, which will be useful for debugging here in a second, because NPC is going to have a public override, which is going to say this method overrides the base class method by the same name. It's going to be void, make sure it has the same name and the same return type, very important. Do you want out now? What are you doing? There, go out. Oh, okay. And it was called interact. And that's all we need. So I'm going to debug log. Oh, goodness. Come on, Visual Studio. Don't do this to me. Debug is doing it to me. Okay, debug.log. I'm going to log out interacting with NPC. Just like that. Cool, cool. So now we can tell if we're interacting with this one or this one. So when I move to interaction, once I get there, what I would like to do is interact with it, right? And this is not going to allow us to detect if we've reached the destination first. This will just interact when I click on it, but it's a way we can test it for now. And in the second, we'll set up the distance check and all that. But no, oh, I didn't. That's right. The key here is we're not inheriting from mono behavior, we're inheriting from interactable. That was kind of the whole point of all that, and I just completely missed it. And this isn't working right. I don't have IntelliSense working. I'll have to restart. Oh my god. I can't do this right now, buddy. Hey, what do you want? You want to go outside? He likes being outside. I'm going to take him outside real quick. Let's go ahead and click play. And with play clicked, there's no errors. Not what I meant to do though. I want to drag NPC onto my NPC. So now it has NPC component, which says looking for a player agent. It's not. I need to hide that in the inspector. But this is also, keep in mind, this is also interactable, right? So it has an interactable type as well. The component does, because we're inheriting from the interactable class, which means the fact that I pass this type right there is going to grab that NPC component for us. At least that's the idea. Let's test it and see what happens. Nothing's going to happen because it doesn't have the tag. I'm going to add tag. What was it called? Interactable object. Just like that. Go back to NPC. Interactable object. Click play. And now I can move it there. Click right there. And interacting with the NPC. But it doesn't do that anywhere else. I click, right? It's just the NPC because the NPC has an NPC component attached to it. Pretty cool. And the same thing would happen for item. We would just create the same system. All we have to do now though, since we can inherit from interactable, not new folder, is just create a, call it pickup item, attach it to item, open this up. It's going to inherit from interactable as well. And of course, I'm going to reload Visual Studio real quick, but I'm going to go ahead and set this up like I had it before. It's going to be a public override void interact and debug.log. Oh, I keep forgetting that IntelliSense is jacked. Interacting with item. And just notice the simple pattern that we have here, right? Any item that we create that needs to be interactable, it's very easy to do by just going from interactable. Interact will be called whenever it's clicked. You can handle it however you want to. Each item can be different. Each object in your world can be interacted with differently and cause a different action to happen. And that's why I wanted to create this series to... I know we've done some stuff in the past that seemed kind of complex, but this isn't so much complex as it is the proper way to handle things. And I wanted to kind of get a bit more serious about the stuff we're doing, right? And I think this is a good place to start with that, because this is a great pattern to follow when you're creating a game that's going to have items and objects in the world that you can interact with, and they're going to do different things, and monsters and other NPCs that you can interact with, and they do different things. And it's all important that it's organized in a way that you can add more very easily and remove stuff without everything breaking. Like I can remove pickup item, and all that will happen is I don't have pickup items anymore. Nothing else breaks, right? That's the whole idea. And it's kind of exciting, honestly. So that I'm finally sharing something that you can build something good upon. So pickup item, I'll add it to item. Just like that. Click play. And just that easily, I click on the item. Click, oh, it needs a tag. So just not that easily. If I add the tag, now, just that easily, Just that easily, I can click on this, and it'll say interacting with the item, interacting with the NPC, and I can still walk just fine and nothing happens. Everything's fine. Item, NPC. Cool stuff. You'll notice though, if I'm in a game and I click on an NPC, I want him to stop before he gets inside the NPC. Right? Same goes for the item. So the way we can handle that is if we're interacting with an item, we can change the stopping distance. If we're not interacting with, say, the ground, we want to walk to wherever we click. We don't want to stop before we get to where we clicked. But if we're interacting with an object in that way, then we can stop a bit before we get to where we're going. And the way I can handle that, I guess we could do it in Interactable, in moved interaction. What I would do before the destination is I would say player agent dot stopping distance is equal to, let's say like 2f, and let's try that. And that changes it for all the interactable objects, right? It's not something that we have to go in and change a bunch of things. It's just all of them are now changed. So I click on the item, and let's see. If I go to player, we can see the stopping distance changed to 2. It doesn't mean 2 is enough though. Let's try 3. I figured that would be Unity units, but maybe it has something to do with the breaking, honestly. It's breaking, not breaking in half, but like the auto breaking thing. It's not breaking before it gets to where it's going. Yeah, see how it slides as it stops? I could change that a bit if I were to go to, because I don't like the way it moves anyway, so I want to do player. I want to increase the angular speed to like 550, acceleration to like 35, and try that out. I like a snappy movement, you know? Yeah, see, now when I click on it, it stops quite a bit before it gets there. That's fine, I like that. It depends on the acceleration it has up to that point. Or I guess actually more so the momentum it has. But that'll work for now. Looks pretty good. And then we can set this up to work with other interactable objects like the sign or the crates. And the way I would do that is I would probably create an actionable item, right? Something like create a C# script, and I'll call it action item. We have pickup item, then action item. An action item is going to be something that other classes derive from that want to say you walk into a portal and you click on the portal and that's going to teleport you somewhere else, right? It's going to be an action that that item performs. Or you pull a lever that's going to do something, open a door or slide a tile somewhere. Or you, I don't know, click on something and it breaks something, right? That's an action that it's performing. We want to make sure that that it all works the same, right? And this will be interactable, and I'll do a public virtual void interact. And now the way I'm setting all these up right now, you may be thinking this seems kind of convoluted for what you're achieving, but you have to understand that this is pretty much a foundation for you to build things on. So this is where you would put your default action code, right? This is the one you can override, right? You can override the interact, what happens then. But you can also make every action item in the game do something similar. So if every action item in the game displays a dialogue saying what it's doing, then you could put that in here. So every action item in the game does that. So if you derive a lever from this and then also a teleport system of some kind, a portal, they will both have a dialogue that tells them what it's doing, even though you didn't put that in the portal code or in the lever code. And that's the whole point, right? This way, every pickup item can have something that's shared and also something custom if you wanted to make an object or a class for each pickup item. Same goes for NPC. It's a pretty cool way to handle it. So this is going to I'm just going to debug, log out something, interacting with base action item. And then on top of that, what I would do, and I would probably have these organized out into folders, right? I could have a folder for action items, then a folder for NPCs, a folder for pickup items, whatever. We'll get to that point if we have that many. But then inside this, I would create, let's say, an action item of signpost, right? So open up signpost. And this would extend action item, and signpost, what it would do, interact. And this would call, the way it filled it in for me, which it's a pretty nice example to show you how you could handle this if you wanted to do something differently. You could set it this way, so your override also calls the base interaction. And the way I was saying, you can add functionality on top of something. You don't want to rewrite what already happened though, right? So this adds on top of this right here. So it's going to call this and then also call whatever else you put in here, right? So you don't have to just replace everything. You can use that and then add some stuff on top of it. And that's pretty cool. So what I want to do though is I just want to log out that we're interacting with a signpost, interacting with signpost, and each signpost will have this attached to it. But we don't have like a dialogue system in place yet. That's going to be the next tutorial. And a signpost will show you a dialogue, and you talk to an NPC, it'll show you a dialogue. Or you pick up an item, it can show you a dialogue. Whatever you want. It's all, that's the whole point. You can do whatever you want. So now I'll take signpost. I will go into my environment, sign, wooden, blank. And I'd probably name these something different. But this is fine. I'll just attach, wait, where's the, that's the base. I'll just attach it to that one for now. And these are using meshed colliders, which you could just change. You could make your own, obviously, like a box collider that encompasses the whole thing. But we're just looking for this. This will work fine. And now, if all is well, all is not well. Oh, yeah, it's not tagged. Interactable object. I was like, all is not well. What's going on? And I click on the signpost. Interacting with base class. Okay, so, interacting with base class. Oh, this needs to override. Sorry. It needs to override the interactable base class in order to override. So I can override it with my other class. There's going to be a bunch of what's going on moments in this series because there's a bunch of stuff happening. But now it's just interacting with signpost because we have the chain of overrides, right? We have the signpost overriding the action item override, which is how it works. Override overrides virtual. But if you have a chain of overrides, override can override an override, and that's fine. But override, action item overrides the interact, and the virtual here. That's the base. That's the very first interact, and we're overriding it. But like I said, if I wanted to have, if I wanted to have this happen, as well as this happen, I would just do base dot interact, just like that, and now both of them will happen. But interacting with signpost, oops, and also interacting with base action item. So that's cool. Everything seems to be working fine. We have the item interactions in place. Now all I have to do is make a few different ones and make the actions for them, like what they do. Like a signpost would set up a dialogue, a treasure chest would give us items. But those all come whenever we have those systems in place. Like the next part, we're going to work on the dialogue system. So once we get that in place, then we can set up the NPC to talk to us, set up the signpost to tell us some stuff, and so on. We'll get the inventory in place, then we can have, oh, one thing I just noticed, I'm glad I saw this, is we're not resetting our stopping distance from after we interact with an item. So we're stopping way before we should. So to change that, I'm going to go to world interaction. And if we're just walking, I'm going to set stopping distance to be 0, which means it'll stop on top of the point. There we go. Everything's working fine. So in the next part, though, we're going to set up the dialogue system, and we'll also set up the system where it doesn't do anything until we get to the destination. Because at the moment, if I clear out my log here and I click the signpost, it interacts with the signpost from across the map. And we don't want that. We want it to wait till we get there. So we'll do that in the next part, as well as the dialogue system, guys. Thank you for watching. If you're enjoying this series, let me know in the comments below. If you have any questions from this video, feel free to ask me in the comments below. My name is Austin, and I will see you next time.